Hello and a very warm welcome to ET Studios. I'm Hemanshi Tewari and we are joining you from the ETCISO Annual Conclave 2024 right here in Vizag. Now, in this panel, which is powered by Microsoft, we're going to discuss about Gen AI, the double-edged sword. With AI evolving almost daily and becoming sophisticated, it is presenting more of the opportunities and of course all of these challenges. So right now we're going to talk about this. We have a panel of 3 experts with us. Say hello to Anujh Tewari, Chief Cybersecurity Advisor at Microsoft, Bithal Bhardwaj, CISO GMR, and Kalpesh Doshi, CISO HDFC. Gentlemen, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Our pleasure.
All right, to kick things off, what are some of the most significant ways you have seen generative AI being integrated to cybersecurity defense systems? Maybe we'll start with you, Bithal.
Wonderful. Good question. Definitely after Gen AI has come out in the market, it has simplified the life of a CISO because now we have our analysts, our teams, they are now powered to give the commands directly to the technology and get the answers. Typically, you will have leaders asking the questions to the teams who would go about finding the answers, but now every single person in the organization have the power to ask the questions and get the answers. Hence, the organization has become much smarter in its defense systems.
All right, even to you, Anuj, how do you see its role being evolved in the next few years?
See, essentially, I think humans have spent a lot of time understanding how computers behave or how computers, talk to us. It's the first time in a long time that the computers are taking a lot of time to understand how we behave and how we react, which is the whole concept of AI, right? I think there's a famous saying which goes that it's not really about what computers can do, which is what we have spent the last 2 decades understanding of what they can do, but it's really about what they should do. And what they should do is they should make our lives easier. This is where the assistance or the AI or co-pilot comes in and makes our day-to-day lives a lot more easier. And I think that's where the evolution is going.
All right, wonderful insights. Now, over to you, Kalpesh. How do you see this Gen AI being integrated to the cybersecurity defense systems? I mean, same question, and how do you see its role being evolved in the next few years?
I think again, Bithal and Anuj has covered it beautifully well. So yes, what it brings is, there's a transformative shift in the terms way we predict, way we detect, and way we respond. So there is an edge that security professionals will have, with more and more AI getting integrated. I think the classic use cases and the benefits which are there for everybody is more of threat intel, right? So today, it's going to be with AI, right? If you really ask any of a CISO or any of our organization, the fatigue because there is tons of data that you have to analyze, and you don't really have resources. Every time you hear that there's a scarcity of cyber resources, so that is not ending anytime soon. So if AI can do a lot of heavy lifting for us, right? It's all about 80-20, right? So your 80% of your errors and your messages, right, really don't need that kind of attention, right? So with 20% resources, if you're able to address 80% of your challenges and let's say your events, that leaves very crucial time for your critical activities. So I think that's where it really plays a role. I also feel from an integration perspective or use cases, we'll see a more and more of that being used, because end of the day it's a cat and mouse race, right? So this will really help us to train our own workforce, our own employees, our own customers, because end of the day we would learn better and we will learn faster as to how the adversaries are planning their attacks, how they're planning their tactics, and how do we have countermeasures effectively there.
All right, thank you for that insight. Gen AI is significant when it comes to threat detection, right? So how effective it is according to you when it comes to detecting zero-day vulnerabilities?
I think from when I really look at a zero-day vulnerability, right, from a Gen AI perspective, what really happens, it will have deeper insights into what is really happening in your environment. It has understanding of, it is learning constantly, right? So it knows your environments, it knows your parameters, it knows your configurations. So when you really train those models, and when it sees and when it learns, from the ecosystem that these are the newer, I would say the new threat vectors, it's going to be more easy. It will be more. I would say it will be a very. The speed will really increase significantly, because you don't have to really go, and try to search a needle, in a room full of AI. Here it will pinpoint with accuracy that this is exactly where you have to really focus on, and you can focus from there. So I think that's where it will make a big difference.
All right, even to you, Bithal, when it comes to Gen AI and threat detection, same question: how it detects, like how efficient it is when it comes to zero-day vulnerabilities and of course new attack vectors. And this is when we compare this to our traditional security models.
Definitely artificial intelligence. I won't call it Gen AI per se. Gen AI has a very different purpose. But when you talk about finding or detecting a threat, a 0 day maybe, artificial intelligence and the machine learning plays a significant role. And the reason for that is the quantum of data which you are seeing coming in. The old traditional way of defining the rules, defining the playbooks, does not work today. You need a solution which can dynamically develop your playbooks, the rule books in the system to be able to find and detect your threats in the environment and report to you. Now, imagine with the quantum computing just around the corner, what's going to happen then? So the quantum of these threats are going to go up significantly, and without the power of artificial intelligence, I don't think there's any other way for us to detect the anomaly in the ecosystem.
All right, quantum of threats are going to grow significantly. And on that note, Anuj, I would like you to come in. When we talk about Gen AI, even cyber criminals use Gen AI, right? So, how is this technology being weaponized? If you can explain us, and what should organizations perhaps do to kind of stay ahead of these emerging threats?
Very well. No, that's a fabulous question. I think generative AI and the advent of generative AI in terms of the overall landscape of AI has accelerated the way in technology was weaponized. And this is really a double-edged sword, right? Now that the computers and the aspects of algorithms can be much more faster, the attackers are actually adopting them to do things much faster at a lot more scale across the time zones without any fatigue. Hence, the attackers have an advantage here, and it's a very asymmetric advantage. The attackers can use all the scale they want, but the organizations still have to follow through their change management constructs. They still have to go through their foundational box. And before the attacks can be averted, it has to really understand what its attack surface really is. Now imagine the artificial intelligence really trying to focus on all the aspects of your environment, traversing it at machine speed, while we have human, defenders or analysts who are thinking through the tools and the technologies that they have today, which I don't want to say are arcane, but are getting, old so rapidly that if we don't keep this pace up, and we do not adopt AI to fight AI or machine to fight machine, it's going to be a very losing war very soon.
All right, even automation is the key benefit of Gen AI. And I would like to come to you, Kalpesh. When it comes to automation, it of course is a key benefit to Gen AI. So, how are you or organizations in your industry using Gen AI to sort of reduce those repetitive tasks? And how are you maintaining that, there are no human errors?
I think from a security standpoint, I'm more of a consumer, right? But what we are seeing, and what is going to help us is, what would really help is the automation of a SOC, right? Because there is a lot of activities which today are manual, and they really consume a lot of bandwidth. So that is something would really make a huge difference, right? Other automation would be a constant learning and then tweaking of your policies, right? And this will really make a sea change on the way you look at compliance, because today what you have is Gen AI. The strength of Gen AI is to really learn from your environment, right? You apply a layer of compliance, so it understands what are your compliance requirements. You're able to apply your parameters in terms of your configuration, how things really operate in your organization, the cultural part of it. You kind of embed that, and what you'd really have is you'll have policy on the fly, right? Which essentially, and that could be automation, because the struggle today is your policies are a point in time policy. They are not relevant because they are documented at a certain time. A lot changes on the technology every time. You don't go back on this. But I think a classic use case would be, you could have a policy which is always updated on a real time basis the regulation, basis what you are doing, and it could prompt that, hey guys, these are the changes you have to bring in a policy, make those changes. And I think that is, we haven't seen that in the industry, but I'm sure maybe next year when we are at the same, at the different venue in the same event, we will have somebody who's saying that, my AI model will be able to learn and we'll be able to develop policies for you. I think those are the use cases.
Of course, thank you so much, and hopefully next year at the same event we're going to discuss about this. Yeah, on that note, Bithal, vulnerability identification is also a big part of Gen AI. So, how can organizations, or how do you ensure that the AI you are using is up to date and consistent, of course? And of course, for the same question, I will also come to you, Anuj, as a technology vendor. But first, from you.
How do I use, you said Gen AI, right? How do I use Gen AI to find a vulnerability in the environment? I would use rather Gen AI to find a vulnerability in the externally visible attack surface of an organization, because that is where essentially the focus is not as much as you have on the internal side of an organization. That's where I will use that capability to be able to pulse the system, or the system using to keep an eye on that the digital ecosystem, to tell me, well, where do I have to prioritize first? Where do I have to go about responding to before I can actually go about bringing a system down? So it is about the attack surface monitoring, where I would use that capability more than the internal ecosystem.
All right, I also want to know from you, when you choose a software, like, right, when you choose something, a platform for Gen AI, how do you choose that? I mean, when it comes to all these tasks, automation, vulnerability, identification, what sort of checklist do you use?
Now, so that's a very interesting question, and I've been waiting for this question to be asked. Generative AI is not a solution I'm going to buy. That's going to be a feature or a capability of the tool or a platform. For example, if I'm talking about a SIM solution or an attack surface monitoring solution or some other solution, Gen AI has to be a capability built into that so that I can use that system more effectively, rather than having a standalone system and building my own LLM, which is going to be a humongous task. I'd rather buy a product which has got a Gen AI feature which I can use to use it more effectively.
All right, well noted. And Anuj, same question when it comes to vulnerability identification. How do you ensure that your systems are up to date and, of course, consistent with the ever evolving threats and more sophisticated threats that are coming in?
No, very well put. The threat landscape is ever evolving, and just like I was alluding in the last comment, it's changing very rapidly. So, what's really important is that, like Brittle and Kalpesh also pointed out, generative AI itself is not going to solve a lot, right? It's really generative AI's ability to bring the answers back to us in very simple, readable human format. See, skill is another area which there is a lot of shortage from a cybersecurity standpoint. And then it's very important that we have ability to bridge that gap when the machine starts to give out answers which are not so technical in nature. The machine starts to write scripts or do interpretation of technology which was very difficult or used to be a L2 or a L3 task. I think that amplification in understanding where the vulnerability lies, how to patch it, and eventually how to quickly remediate it is where the gold mine lies. And that's what generative AI and AI in general is progressing and doing good on.
And with that, I want to come to all three of you, starting with you, Kalpesh, sir. When it comes to Gen AI is becoming more advanced day by day. How can organizations sort of balance the need for innovation, but also the ethical and privacy concerns? How can one do that?
I think that will always be a dilemma, but I think from a privacy perspective, what is needed? See, every technology has a pros and a con, right? With Gen AI, absolutely yes. If your data, if you are not sensitive or you're not careful about the data that has been fed into the Gen AI, it can be a challenge. So you definitely want to make sure that your sensitive data is fed properly. There is also an important part of what is in the public LLM model or what is in the private. So you have to have a fine balance, because you have to be careful about what can go out in public, what you want to really keep it in your private place of it. And I think that is really you need to get a balance of all of this and then come out with a solution that's it's a mix of both the worlds. It's possible, because you don't have to have protection all the times. There'll be a lot of things which you can rely on the public partnership, or it could be community, it could be at the industry, or it could be in general in public. But there would always be some cases where you have to protect your data and you have to be very selective about it. I always feel security is common sense. Even at our homes, we don't have same level of protection for everything, right? Our jewels, and whatever is our valuables are in the storage. I think the same thing will have to be very careful. One more thing about Gen AI is an adversarial attack, or if the Gen AI is poisoned, right? It could have negative repercussion, could have negative impact, right? So you have to continuously ensure that you're training or you're monitoring your Gen AI to ensure that it's getting you the desired outcomes and it's giving you the desired results. So I think monitoring and making sure that it's working the desired way, I think is going to be critical.
And also, your customers are people who are seeking insurances, right? The huge amounts of data they have, a lot more responsibility you have on your shoulders. When it comes to the frameworks, like what sort of frameworks do you rely on when it comes to responsible AI usage? If quickly you can.
There aren't any frameworks available on the Gen AI. Countries are framing policies, right? US is framing, Europe is framing a policy. So what you really do over here is you fall back to the NIST framework, or you always look back to the regulator and make sure there is a backward compliance. At least the hygiene parameters remain the same, and then you make sure your data. That's the reason. Anything which is privacy, when it's about customer data, make sure it doesn't go onto the public. The LLM, you keep it very much restricted.
Yeah.
Make sure people who have access. It's not again the generative AI on the public platform, but you would have something which is very customized. It's a very much secure in a secure manner, and then you can enable it across. And I think same experience for the customer. A customer wants a better experience, customer wants better services, but definitely not at the cost of their privacy, not at the cost of their their security.
The insurance need to be provided at that part as well. Yeah, on that note, I'm coming to you, Bithal sir. At GMR, of course, you're handling so much of passenger data, right? A lot of privacy concerns might occur. So how are you kind of balancing this? Again, the same question, the need for innovation and also keeping in mind the ethical and privacy concerns. And what sort of frameworks do you think we should rely on for responsible AI usage?
Generally, your question was about what frameworks are typically used. I don't think it has reached a stage where you're talking about the frameworks. There is no one framework which has taken a pole position here. However, there are certain principles which are being followed right now in terms of generative AI. Essentially, it's about making sure that I'm using the right data set so that there are no biases, creeping in, making sure that my AI system or my generative AI system is not hallucinating. So around privacy, by mistake, it should not be able to divulging a lot of confidential or privacy data as well. So those are certain, I would say not framework, but the principles which industry is looking at right now when they are building these systems.
All right, thank you for that. And thank you for clarifying that, of course. And coming to you, Anuj, of course, the same question, but from the technology vendor point of view. When like all these softwares that you're making, that you're using, like how do you kind of maintain that sort of balance? You keep the ethical and privacy concerns in check while also not compromising with the innovation that you have to do.
Fabulous, fabulous. So Microsoft has this initiative called the Secure Futures Initiative. These principles ensure that we not only do the right thing as a service provider, but we also first secure ourselves, as we have a lot of responsibility towards the consumers who use our technology as well. Now, all of these things always start with doing the basics right. The fundamentals of cybersecurity have not really changed, and basic secure development practices, making sure that there is an adequate awareness and training, making sure there are enough checks and balances in terms of quality assurance, and making sure that there is a good feedback loop for there would be times when things would go wrong, but it's really about pivoting and making sure that it's being taken care of are some of the tenets that we work around with.
All right, wonderful. Thank you for that insight from a technology vendor perspective, at least, because we all needed to hear that our data is being kept safe. Now, on that note, as we are wrapping up this conversation, gentlemen, looking ahead, what future trends do you see in this space when it comes to Gen AI? And do you think, that Gen AI is going to solve all the problems and we won't need humans, right? Or we still need human oversight to check all those cybersecurity problems? Starting with you, Kalpesh, sir.
I think it's more of trying to read the future through a crystal ball. Very difficult. Generative AI definitely is a lot of promises, right? It does simplify a lot of work. The way I look at it is there is so much today that needs to be done, but that cannot be done because of scarcity of resources. Typically, your human resources, right? So I don't see that to being replacing it. Again, the way the cyber or any of the world, the way it really operates. If you really ask me, it's going to replace the jobs. The answer is I would say if you look at every transformation of a technology, it did make some jobs redundant, but it created equal number of new jobs, right? So yes, the way we manage cyber today, it may change, right? Today, we're sitting on a console, we have to remember the lot of commands and all of them. Maybe in future we may be doing something else where we're interacting with with the Gen AI powered systems, and it will be doing the job. But end of the day, I just believe that humans will continue to play a role, because we're living in a world which is very dynamic. A lot of us do deal with humans, right? Their emotions. When you transact, when you do a lot of activities, right? There are human beings, there are human interactions. You'll always need human beings at the top of it to have a watch of it. Right? That's the demand supply is such a huge one. So it's a welcome thing. I don't think anybody over here would be scared of what AI can do. It's all the more we are welcoming it, and let us let it help us to take some of the load away and do some heavy lifting for us. So we are excited about those opportunities.
All right, absolutely. Now, on that note, Anuj, first, are we gonna lose our jobs?
Not at all. Not at all.
All right. Now, on that note, same question. Like, do you think that we still need human oversight? How much of human oversight do we need when it comes to kind of integrating these Gen AI technologies? Where are we currently, and what are you looking ahead at the future?
So I think generative AI and AI in general needs oversight for sure. Just like any technology, for instance, if we are driving a car, can we do actually go completely humanless? Well, possibly not today. Similarly, in parlance of that, in computers or in cybersecurity, do we need governance over AI? The answer is an absolute and astounding yes. We have seen AI hallucinating. We have seen AI essentially sometimes not knowing the boundaries, jailbreaking the systems. And hence, we really got to be cautious around how we use this beautiful tool which we have at our disposal. But look at Microsoft, at least we have this philosophy and we call this the co-pilot. So essentially, it is not the pilot, it is the co-pilot. It's here to assist you. While human being remains in charge, they make all the decisions, while the AI does the procedural, the mundane tasks for the human and lets the person drive the objectives that they have to.
All right. Thank you so much for those brilliantly put insights, and of course, brilliant insights. Now, coming to you, Bithal sir, same question. Do we need human oversight when it comes to AI driven threats now? Because there are a lot of AI driven threats. So, do we still need human oversight?
Well, accountants didn't lose a job when the calculator was invented. I'm sure engineers are still around after computer was invented.
Yeah.
Right? So generative AI is going to be just a tool. Definitely, it will have an impact on certain sectors, like in the ones in the creative sector. But the human ingenuity obviously makes these technologies slave over a period of time. So, and I think the way Gen AI is right now in the hype cycle, it is now settling in with the use cases, so that a phobia of is going to take off, the job's going to go away soon. We rather should have a new phobia now. Let's worry about the post-quantum computing era. That's around the corner. Ye ho gaya. Let's move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for those wonderful insights. And Kalpesh, you were talking about human resource and how that is going to get affected. I feel at the end of the day, we all are human resources, right? And we cannot, of course, compromise with the human angle. It's a like mere foundation of human resource, and we cannot compromise with that. On that note, thank you so much, gentlemen, for these brilliant insights and such an interesting conversation. Thank you so much, Anuj, for telling us about Copilot and how it's not a pilot, but a co-pilot. Thank you so much. And to our viewers, stay tuned for more such videos as we are joining you from ETCISO Annual Conclave 2024 in Vizag.